Corel Painter is very different from Photoshop in that it was designed from the ground up to be a natural media painting program. And it bends over backwards just trying to create a mark that is reminiscent of pastels or watercolor or paints. So I open up this painting of the cement mixer in Corel Painter. I'm going to add oil brush strokes on top of this painting. I want to control a couple of things. I can control the shine of the paint, how thick the paint is, and if I want to, I can even control the direction of the lights. And it's fascinating because not only are you smearing, are you applying the color, but when you have a brush with red paint and you accidentally touch another passage that is blue, you're going to get a purple that comes up. So is that wetness of the paint is something that Photoshop really cannot do. And it just takes the level of realism to this whole other plane. So I'm going to come in here and just start painting. It allows me to take the paint and I can start to smear it. Let me hide all the palettes. Start to smear it as if I have real oils. And the thing is that if you look up close at the brush strokes, you'll see that there's dimensionality to the brush stroke. There's highlight, there's shadow. It gets thick and thin, just like in Photoshop. And it smears paint, just like a real oil. So this way, I'm now thinking about not just the color, now I'm thinking about the thickness of the paint, the direction of the brush stroke, to take the artwork to a whole other level. Thin brush, thick, and just smears the paint, just like wet oils. And that's how I would usually work. I would block out the colors in Photoshop. I use Photoshop to work on my compositing, put the complex scenes together, all the missing pieces. And then when the painting is basically blocked in and it's done, I'll bring it over into Painter to add the dimensionality of the brush strokes. Because that's really important to me. That's what makes this look like an actual oil painting. You have to, it's part of the language, so you have to use it judiciously. Because after a while, the entire piece is just going to wind up looking like the same homogeneous glob of paint. And they will reach a point when I would actually pull out and wanted to add some dry paint on top of that. Because right now, when I make a new mark, it essentially just smears the color that's already there. And it's the combination of one brush stroke underneath another that gives it all this extra energy, which is something that you really couldn't do in Photoshop. Now right now it looks sort of sloppy, but the truth of it is that if you were to actually print this out, you're looking at it up close, but really the file itself is much, much smaller. So all those marks that you think may be too coarse on a monitor really does hold up quite well when it prints. And that's one of the problems with working on a computer, is that because you can zoom in at this level, you could sit down and noodle on this painting for hours. But when you print it out and you realize that this one section that you worked on was really only about a ½ inch square. If I'm working on just, for example, this one wheel, and I'm working on that wheel for hours until it's just perfect, then when you zoom out and you realize, well, that's a terrific wheel, but the rest of the painting is really suffering. It's what we consider like losing your edges. You don't want to lose your edges, because not everything needs to be spelled out. Without having the benefit of looking at the four corners of the piece on a computer, it's easy to lose your edges. And I think that's really important, because when you work on a computer, you can render everything to its highest level of detail, and the piece would really suffer. I use the analogy of trying to tell a story. If every single sentence in your story had an exclamation mark, you'd be doing nothing but shouting. And you need to learn how to pull back and work on quiet passages, so that when you hit it with detail or something that's really powerful, then it resonates even more. And I like to look at the artwork as a kind of a musical piece, that you have to have quiet areas and loud areas in the overall composition. I really needed to work on it some more in Photoshop, with the layers, selections, fix everything up, and then when it's done I bring it into Painter, just to add all of the finishing touches.